hypnotic dance. She holds me here with only a glance. She's over me. She's over me. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Paranormal Portal, Bedtime Stories From Beyond. I don't know why I started that in accent, but it's just been a long day, but a good day. Had a great day. Had company today. Miss Julia came over and hung out at the Portal household, so we had a good time. And the little ones played. It was a lot of fun. But I'm here, and you're here, and I guess hope you're having a great Tuesday today. Yeah, it's Tuesday already. Wow. Just got done recording a podcast with our good friend, Mr. Dan Pruitt, paranormal investigator, for the podcast, and that'll be releasing sometime in the next couple weeks or 3 weeks. I'm not sure exactly where it'll fall in the rotation, but it was a great talk and great conversation, great information, and if you haven't already checked out our podcast, please feel free to do so. It would be wonderful if you would help us support that endeavor. Lots of people have been checking it out. It's really doing wonderfully, and we're really having a great time, and just really overwhelmed with all the attention we're getting. And a special thanks to both Mr. Wes Germer of the Sasquatch Chronicles and Tony Merkel with the Confessionals podcast for helping people find it. They've really been just really extending the red carpet to us, helping us out, getting our feet on the ground in the podcasting universe, and we are absolutely thrilled to have them endorsing what we're doing. I just hope we can continue to live up to the hype, but we're doing our best. We always do. Of course, tomorrow night, Don will be returning here in the studio with me, and we'll get into our normal Wednesday 2-hour show and have a great time. I hope you guys will join us then. These bedtime stories, if you're new to the portal, is just like a 45-minute to an hour, just a little excursion into the paranormal. Usually ghost stories. Sometimes we cover cryptids. Sometimes, we really can cover anything. There's no rules that we have to cover one thing or another. It's just, quite honestly, full disclosure that it's probably easiest for me to cover the ghost stories because ghost stories are pretty easy to find. They're one of the most prolific paranormal phenomena going back into antiquity. We hear all the time about ghosts and spirits and hauntings and stuff. They're maybe part of our genetic core somewhere in there, even, way back when we were digging in caves and stuff. Who knows? But anyway, I hope you guys are all ready because it's time for bed. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I guess that was a little, I don't know if it was leggy for you guys. It was a little clippy for me, but I got a lot going on here on the computer. I've been really taxing it today with a lot of different projects and stuff. So it might be partially my fault if that hiccuped a little bit on that intro animation. But anyway, welcome to the show. And I guess that's about it. Let's get underway and see what kind of spookiness we can dig up tonight. I'm usually much more prepared than I am now, but and that that's kind of I'm usually not very prepared anyway. I just kind of turn on the microphone and start talking. But I try to be a little ahead of the game, more so than I am today. I got some things open here that I can probably close to make a little more room and to keep my computer a little more happy. If you get a chance, make sure to listen to the latest episodes of both the Sasquatch Chronicles at SasquatchChronicles.com or head over and check out the Confessionals at theconfessionalspodcast.com. They both have new episodes out and wonderful episodes. And as always, make sure to head over to World Bigfoot Radio on YouTube and check out what the Duke is up to as well. He's always got amazing guests and amazing shows as well. And Duke has done an amazing job helping us as, I keep saying as well. I don't know what else to say. I'm kind of running out of words here, but I'm a little tired. But anyway, just trying to support my friends because my friends have been bending over backwards supporting me. And I definitely want to bring attention to what they're doing. Not that I feel like, all three of those shows probably need my promoting. They're pretty well established anyway, but I figure it can't hurt, right? All right, so let's get on the journey here and see where we end up. Our first visit tonight here on the Paranormal Portal Bedtime Stories From Beyond Express is North Carolina. So let's see what's going on in North Carolina. I wonder if my cousin's listening. He and his wife haven't been letting me know lately, so I don't know what the hell's going on. That's me fishing to see if they respond. North Carolina is first. So this story I feel might be somewhat tie into another story that I posted, which told of an experience while living with my father. There was an old abandoned house almost right across the street from ours, and you could tell that it had been involved in a fire at some point. And being young teenagers with nothing better to do, my friend from up the street and I would go over there and climb up into the house, and everything was still in place, like somebody had just up and left. We'd walk through the house, dumb because it was listed condemned. Nonetheless, we would look through things, and there were boxes of really interesting books and literature, and this was not smart, I know, but I took a few boxes home with me. And I went through some of the boxes and forgot about them for a little while, and in the meantime, the house was leveled and set for redevelopment. After a few months, my friend and I were bored and came across the boxes that I had taken from that house, and in one of the boxes we discovered a man's birth and death certificate, along with other achievements such as photos, license, and other family heirlooms, and we both looked at each other and both pretty much said the same thing. Oh, crap. We knew at this point about the woman who had committed suicide in the home prior to us moving in, but after discovering the objects in the box, we thought that maybe this man was in my house too. I was going to take the boxes back and bury them in the ground where the house had stood, but before I could, my dad made a dump run one day and had taken all the boxes with him and chucked them. Oh, no. Every time we would walk by that lot, there was a very, very noticeable temperature drop. Again, being dumb, we took a Ouija board, oh no, to the lot to try to communicate with the man to apologize. I would never ever use one now because I know of the dangers, and so myself, my buddy from up the road, and his brother tried to contact him. We had a candle burning in a long cylinder glass next to us, and while talking with the Ouija board, we kept getting the messages, "Go die on the Sabbath." And when we asked its name, it kept saying Vec or Vor. Then, all of a sudden, the flame from the glass, which originally was a good 5 inches down into the glass, shot up about 2 to 3 inches out of the glass. We decided to call it quits at this point, but before we left the lot, my friend's brother was asking me what the guy looked like and began describing what he said. There was a man in the tree watching us with pure hatred in his eyes. He described to me the man that I had seen in the boxes from the property, and he had not seen the pictures, and we definitely booked it out of there real quick. To this day, I don't know if it was the woman haunting my house, or if I allowed the man in, or if either one were to blame. Yeah, I don't know. You got to be careful bringing stuff in. That's especially if you loot it from a house. My God, because then it comes with all the anger too. Ill-gotten gains, that whole thing. So just be careful. I wouldn't recommend going into a foreclosed or condemned properties and looting them anyway. But if you're bound and determined to do such things, at least do what you can to protect yourself. Next one is Florida. Let's find out what's going on in Florida. Odin. Oh yeah, that's Julia's new cat. It's a little black kitty. Apparently, there's quite a few black kitties getting brought into the world lately, or at least people are bringing them home. There used to be quite a bit of superstition around a black cat, but I don't know. I've had several black cats, and they've just all been wonderful. And I've had tiger striped and orange and different colored cats, and I don't know. I don't think there's much except the fact that they have a gene that gives them black hair or orange hair or whatever the hell color hair they get. They're just little beings. I mean, they're little sweethearts, I think. Unless you don't like cats, then you might want to stick to dogs. But otherwise, I'm just saying. I don't believe in any of those superstitions. I think that they are wonderful little things. So this is Florida. I'm not saying my house is haunted because that would most likely be false. Oh, really? But I can put my finger on some weird things that have been happening. My dad has also only had one ghostly experience. Weird too, because he's 53 and have had all the chances in the world to have a paranormal experience. For example, when he was in the Army in Texas, he was out in the desert at night where you could see anything in the sky, and he never once saw a UFO. That was my experience too. I was always looking up at the sky going, what are people seeing? I used to live way out in the sticks, and the night there was no light pollution. I mean, you could just see the stars in the sky, no problem. And I'd always just stare up there, just going, I want to see something, and never did. Never did when I was younger. I did as an adult, as I've shared on the show many times, but I really was looking. I really was. I just couldn't figure out, well, are these people just really making this stuff up, or am I really just missing this? Why am I not seeing anything? And then when I did, it was like, it's just pow. So it was a perfect setting too. But when he was 12 and he lived in Long Island, he had some friends, went to a friend's house and played ball. And then they all went inside and headed down to the basement. They were the only ones there. And when they reached the door to the basement, they heard a screeching sound of aluminum on the floor. They ran back up the stairs as fast as they could, and they looked through the basement window outside and saw a chair had moved all the way across the room. When the parents came home, they took them down to the basement to show them the chair had moved, but guess what? The chair was back where it was in the first place. Nobody believed them. My mom's friend's birthday was recently, and she lived in Akron, Ohio. And they were supposed to move to California, get married, and live together. But he left without her and got back together with his ex-wife. My mom was upset and never answered his phone calls. One day, she decided to call him, and unfortunately, she found out he had died a couple of years earlier, and she was devastated. Around the time of his birthday, she found feathers around the house. We never find feathers around the house, and we have no pet birds. She also found coins. Okay, so maybe it was a coincidence. Well, not exactly. One morning, she woke up to make coffee and was about to take the cup out of the dishwasher when she saw a penny. Okay, I thought it was panny at first, but it's an E. The cup was turned over, and the penny was sitting on the bottom of the cup. Explain that, please. Who would put a penny on the coffee cup? My mom doesn't do it. She's busy all the time. My dad is at work all day and goes to bed early, and my sister literally is never home. And I know I didn't do it. Lastly, I want to tell a story about my sister. She was about 14 or 13 maybe when this happened, and she had just started doing her own laundry. Keep in mind, she does not have a job, and my parents would not secretly do this to her. And like I said, they're very busy. Well, every time my sister would do her laundry, she would find money in her pockets, like lots of money. I thought maybe I thought maybe she kept putting the same money in her pockets and thinking she found more, but that really wasn't the case. Number one, she didn't have any money, and number two, she started collecting it and came up with a lot. After a while, though, the money stopped coming, and I don't know what happened after that. I probably have more stories, I just can't think of them right now, but when I remember them, I'll post them. Very interesting. Let's see what's next. New York. New York. York. I live with my boyfriend at his parents' house in New York. About a month ago, a couple of days before Christmas, my boyfriend and I were in our room watching TV, and his parents were asleep, and his uncle, who also lives with us, has his room down in the cellar. It was about 2 a.m. when my boyfriend's uncle came and knocked on our bedroom door. When my boyfriend opened the door, his uncle told him that he needed to talk to him, so they went into the living room. His uncle told him that he thought my boyfriend was playing a joke on him because he heard something tapping on his door and then his room got really cold all of a sudden. His door burst open like someone kicked it, and the cellar was pitch black, so he couldn't see anything. He called out to see if my boyfriend was there, and once he did that, something started growling at him from the dark, and it kept getting closer and closer. So he got scared and started to walk up the cellar stairs, when between the cellar stairs, something that looked like a man went walking across the cellar and into the wall. After he found out it wasn't my boyfriend, he really freaked out. So my boyfriend decided to go downstairs with him to see if they could figure out what it could be. When he walked down the stairs, his hair on his body stood up, and he could see his breath, and he felt like there was something in the cellar, but could not see anything. The next night, we were all in the kitchen just talking and playing Texas Hold'em when the garbage can picked up and got thrown across the room right in front of us. We all heard all this crashing noise down in the cellar and the sound of someone running up the cellar stairs. There were things all over the basement knocked down and across the room, and it was freezing cold again. The whole family, including me, has been depressed, and we feel like there's something negative in this house. We feel like we are constantly being watched. The side door that goes into the garage opens and slams by itself. I went in the cellar to do laundry one day and kept feeling like someone was standing behind me. Then about a week ago, on January 14th, I woke at about 5 a.m. to the sound of someone banging on the walls outside my bedroom, down the hallway. And when I opened the door, nothing was there, and everyone else was still asleep. I keep feeling that something bad is going to happen soon, and I will not even go to the cellar by myself anymore. If you have any ideas on what it is or how to get rid of this, please let me know. Yeah, it sounds like you need help. If all that stuff is really going on, that's, for one, it's an incredibly active haunting. It's incredibly energetic. And it's probably not your run-of-the-mill just haunting. Not saying it's a demonic thing, but there's many other things in between that it could be. But it's could be a elemental of some kind or something. That's really creepy. Something's pissed. All right, next we're going to Michigan. Michigan again. We're going to Michigan again. Just looking up in the chats to see if I've missed anything. I'm sure I'm missing stuff all the time. All right, let's go to Michigan and see what's going on there. The early years of my marriage to my husband, Jim, we were looking for an apartment that was really cheap and close to his work. This was 1971 in Ypsilanti. In the paper, we found one that all we had to do was walk across the yard, down the field, and over the railroad track, and we would be at work. The rent is what we liked the best. It was really cheap. We went to see it, and it was in the basement of an elderly lady's home, and she took us down many steps to the basement, and to the left of us was a door she unlocked, and we all went in. The kitchen was small, and the living room and bedroom were actually only with a curtain drawn across from wall to wall. To have a bedroom there in the apartment was two small windows, and the whole apartment was not very big. It was quite dark, even with the few lights on in there. I asked where the bathroom was, and she took us out the door to the apartment, down this long, very dim hallway. To the right of us was another curtain, and behind that was a shower stall. And then we went to another room with a curtain. This person likes curtains, jeez. And that was the toilet and the small sink. Across from the toilet was a door in which she took us in there, and it was the utility room where she had a washer and dryer. And many of the shelves with some big barrows. What the hell are barrows? Barrows. Sitting next to the washer. I'm not sure what barrows are, but somebody will have to let me know. She told us we could wash our clothes and dry them or hang them on the line that was hanging there as long as we kept the room clean. I told my husband the room was cold, has a cold feeling to me, and he said that was because it was in the basement. My husband looked at me and said, "We'll take the apartment." So the next day we packed up our things from our other apartment and took to our new apartment. We got all our things to the new apartment, and then my husband, who worked the second shift, had to get ready for work, and I told him I would have plenty to do unpacking and putting things away. For days I would put our things away, and we got a lamp for the living room so there would be more light in the apartment as it was too dim for me, and that seemed to brighten up all the rooms since the apartment was so small. But we had no children, and with the price we could not go wrong. We had no phone while we lived there, but our landlady told us we could always come upstairs and use the one she had when we needed to. We thanked her, and we went back to our new home in the basement. One night my husband woke me up and asked if I heard that noise coming from the utility room. I said, "No, what are you talking about?" And he said it sounded like something was being dragged across the floor. I said, "No, I didn't hear anything." We stayed awake for a little while and nothing, so I fell back to sleep. About a week later one night I was not feeling real well, so I went to sleep and pulled the curtain back to let in the heat, and I was woke up by a noise, and I rolled over to look at the clock, and it was nearly 3 a.m. It was long past time for my husband to be home. He was drunk, so I figure he was out at the bars. Maybe it was my imagination working that I had heard something, as I was very tired. I stayed awake waiting for my husband to come home and listening to all sorts of noises. I prayed a lot to the Lord to protect me until my man came home. Some sounded like dragging and some sounded like banging on the wall next to the head of the bed. But I got out of the bed and sat on the sofa, pulled the curtain closed. I wanted to go upstairs and use the phone, but too frightened to open the door, so I pulled a chair up under the doorknob to keep whatever was out there in the hallway and the other room from getting in. I stayed awake until my husband, who was drunk, came in at around 4 a.m. When he banged up against the door, my heart went so fast I could hardly breathe. Then I heard him say, "Let me in." I went and removed the chair and flung myself into his arms, shaking. He didn't notice. He went to bed, and I was next to him after the door was locked and the chair under the knob. The next day we had a talk, and he said to me, "I told you something woke me up one night. Now you will listen to what I say, right?" And I said, "Yes." We looked into the other room where the washer and dryer was in the morning and didn't see anything out of place. No scratch marks on the floor, nothing was out of order in that room. And we checked the bathroom and the shower room, nothing out of order. And one night I was so cold and frightened, I had to go to the bathroom at the other end of the hallway. I held it in for as long as I could, and then I finally just had to open the door and go down the long, dim hallway to the toilet. Did my business, not wanting to look into the laundry room. I hurried back to the apartment and locked the door, and I felt like something was watching me while I was in the bathroom. Everything seemed to calm down, and so did we. My husband went to bed early, being drunk and all, and I had to go to the bathroom and take a shower. I did the shower first and then went to the toilet. The laundry room door was open, and the curtain to the toilet was open a bit. As I sat on the toilet and looked into that room, my heart nearly stopped. I could see what happened to be, or what appeared to be, a man hanging from the neck in the laundry room, just swinging around the limp. I got off that toilet and went to the apartment shaking, too afraid to stay there. Too afraid to stay there, but they spelled it Their. Flung open the door and ran up the stairs and outside. Our landlady came out wanting to know what all the noise was from, and I told her the basement was haunted, and she laughed at me. And then she told me this story. Her husband was a drunk, and he spent a lot of time in the basement being drunk. And as she would not let him be upstairs, I asked if he slept in the little apartment when he was drunk, and she said he might have. She did not chase after him, and she said one day she went away and came back and had to do some laundry and went downstairs to find he hung himself in the laundry room, and yes, I would be able to see the area where he hung himself when I was sitting on the toilet. I asked her with a shaky voice, what did he stand on to do this with? And she told me she found one of those old barrows that was next to the washer rolled over near him, and so figured he used that to stand on. And I told her all of the noises I had heard since we lived there, the dragging, banging, and like gasping. She told me she has heard them all of that too, and when she's been in the basement, and I told her I seen him hanging there and he looked human form to me. And she said she has seen him down there too, and she just tells him to behave himself and goes on with her work. She told me he would not hurt me. He was dead, and I told her I was not going to live in a place like this no more. Not the best grammar. My husband and I had to live there for a little longer, and the TV went out, and the only thing I had that would make noise, so I couldn't hear what was going on in the other room, was the radio, which I played loud to drown out all the other noises. One day I called my mom and asked if we could stay with them upstairs and pay them the rent we paid here, and she asked why, and I told her, and we moved out of the small apartment, and we went to my mom and dad's home. Sometime after that, I went back to talk to the landlady and asked her why she didn't tell us about all that before we took the apartment. She said she should have, but she needed the money, and if she would have said anything, no one would rent it. I never went back after that. Yeah, that's not even nice. If you know your place is haunted, would you, could you just let somebody rent it? Just be like, no, it's fine. Just make sure the rent's here. Don't mind if your dishes move. Just make sure the rent's on the first. Some people don't have a soul, I think. Okay, a barrow is a barrel. Okay, thank you, Mini Musings. I appreciate that because, I think I'm a relatively intelligent person, but when I'm reading these stories, they have these figures of speech. I don't know what the hell they're talking about sometimes. So I appreciate you figuring that out for me. A barrel would make sense. That would make sense. So that's creepy. And I don't know. It's tough. The whole suicide thing is pretty tough. Somebody that's drinking like that, I don't know. I suppose they're probably trying to kill some pain. They're trying to fill themselves up with something because they're so empty, but it's, the substances are never going to really get you anywhere, obviously, but if you're already suffering from depression, I think the worst thing you could do is become an alcoholic because, that's not far removed from the drain. I think you're already circling the drain dealing with emotions you don't know what to do with, and then to add a depressant on top of that is just like, wow. So my heart goes out to whoever, hasn't found help. There's so many ways to get help. There's so many ways. Call somebody if you're ever that down and you're feeling that empty. Find someone to talk to, even if it's a stranger. Just find someone to talk to and find your way through it, because It's one of my favorite old sayings. It's been around forever, but it says suicide is a permanent solution to temporary problems. And I know life gets tough. It gets so hard, and it's hard to figure out. It's hard to know what the hell you're supposed to do when everything just feels like it's upside down. But I don't know. No matter how hard things have been, I've always managed to find a way through it. I don't know how sometimes, but I have. And I know what it feels like to hurt, and a lot. And I hope that if anybody listening needs to hear that, I hope that helps, because it'll get better. It always does. Somehow it just gets better. Next one's coming from Minnesota, which is my old grounds, my old stomping grounds. And the Duke's old stomping grounds, too. Let's see what's going on in Minnesota in 1975, apparently. So this story goes back to 1975 when my family, my mother, brother, sister, and brand new niece moved to a new home in South Minneapolis. That's South Minneapolis can be either, well, yeah, South Minneapolis is kind of nice. I don't know, in 1975, I suppose it was nicer, but I was in that area in the late 80s, 90s, and it was pretty nice in South Minneapolis. I don't think there was too many rough places. Most of the rough places in Minneapolis back then were in North Minneapolis. North Minneapolis was a tough place. We were forced to move for my mother's health. She required a first floor bedroom, and shortly after moving in, our father, my mom's ex, moved in to help with all the bills and built himself a room in the basement. Early on, there were some odd occurrences. My father, an extremely early riser, 3 to 4 a.m., would hear a baby crying from the upstairs rooms, and where I sister was living, I think it's my sister, with her new baby. However, it was not the baby. She would be sound asleep. On 2 occasions, my sister woke in the middle of the night and looked over to the crib in the next room. It's an open floor plan with large doorways without doors, and notice a little girl standing next to the crib, and she would simply blow it off and go back to sleep. On one occasion, a few years later, my father, again the early riser, was standing in the doorway between the living room and the dining room, a regular habit of his, and he was looking out the picture window at the front of the house, just checking out the neighborhood, and on this occasion, he decided to look down next to him, and there was a little girl standing right next to him. He looked up and upon realizing what he saw, he looked back and she was gone. By the time of this event, my sister had married and moved out with her daughter. Also, after my sister did move, my dad said that the crying he heard from upstairs had become more frequent. On to a couple of experiences of friends of the family that were quite odd. A few years after my sister moved out, I took the upstairs area as my own and basically 3 rooms to myself. We decided to rent my old bedroom to a friend of mine who needed a place to stay. One night he came home with his girlfriend and went directly to his room. My mom and I had been in the living room watching television, and he came back a few minutes later and asked if I had been upstairs, and when I had said no, he got a really puzzled look on his face, and he said, as they pulled out in front, As they pulled out front, that they looked to the upstairs windows and saw someone putting boards over the windows from the inside. Being as I was the only one who should sleep up there, this made me a bit uncomfortable. When I finally went to bed, and I delayed it as long as possible, there was nothing out of place in the room, no boards on the windows. The other person to witness something odd from outside the house was my brother's girlfriend, and they had come over for a family gathering and noted that when they pulled up, she too looked to the upstairs window, and there was a little girl standing in the window waving at them. There was no one upstairs at this time. Now I can get to the personal experiences I've had. The first was a couple of years before my mother and father passed away. The only people living in the house at the time were my parents and I was It was nearing Christmas, and we had a metal wardrobe in what was once my bedroom, and my mom had asked me to check for one of the gifts to make sure we didn't get a duplicate. And I walked back to check, and the cabinet was locked. I went to the kitchen to look for the key on the key rack we kept inside the kitchen door, and that would usually be kept here, and it wasn't anywhere on the rack. I walked back to the bedroom to check if the key was in there, and no luck. I went back to the rack one last time to make sure I didn't miss it, still not there. Finally, as I was walking back to the bedroom, I stepped on something sharp and metal. The key was there on the floor between the kitchen and the bedroom. This could be explained in many ways, that the room had just been vacuumed that day. The key would have been sucked up. My last experience is the most odd. My wife-to-be and I were in the house cleaning up as much as the debris left by my moving out, and we had finished cleaning. We were sitting in the dining room table we were leaving behind, and we were sitting talking about my family and my recently deceased parents. And I noted that the hall light was on and asked her to remind me to turn it off before we left. This light is an old round fluorescent bulb with a pull chain. About an hour later, we were finally ready to leave, and I remembered that I needed to turn off that light. However, when I looked to hall, the light was off. I'm sorry, some of these are written so poorly. I have to reassemble them quickly as I'm reading them. And we had not moved from the table. We were also alone in the house. I went and pulled the chain a couple of times to make sure the light worked, and there were no problems. And it was then we decided to leave as soon as possible. I've not been in the house since 1991, but it remains in the family with my sister and husband living there now. They have not reported any new occurrences, but I keep asking. Thanks for reading my story. Next one is West Virginia. And again, if you want to call in and be a part of the show, I don't know how much time is left. Let me look at the timer here and see how long we've been at it. Oh, we've got a lot of time left. We've only been at this for 37 minutes. Wow. I don't know why. I must be tired. It does actually feel like longer tonight. So West Virginia. I think it's because a few of these stories have been so poorly written that they're actually a struggle to read. Okay, West Virginia. I'm writing this because my sister has been acting really weird. When I was sleeping one night, I heard this shrill laughing from her room. So I went down the hall to see what it was, and she was standing up with her light on, talking to herself in the mirror. So I went back to bed, and the next morning she was in her bed again. And before I went to school, I asked her who she was talking to, and she said she was talking to the girl in the mirror. So I was freaked out at first, but then I did research on the house, and there were 3 people that died here. It was a little girl who I think she was talking to in the mirror, and a little boy and a father, which is downstairs. I usually see the man downstairs sitting in a rocking chair next to the fireplace when it is lit, but I've never actually seen the girl or the boy. So one day she was talking to herself in the mirror in her room again, and asked her what was the little girl's name, and she said it was Nicole. Now, I've always believed in ghosts and have seen them. The man's name downstairs is Tom, and the little girl's name was Nicole. But on the research, they did not mention the little boy's name, so I set up a motion camera in her room, and it takes pictures with motion. So when I looked at the film after school one day, it had pictures of this clear tan figure of the shape of a little girl playing with the Dora doll house. So I was startled at first, but I always see ghosts everywhere, and my mom does also. Do you think she has the ability to see ghosts? Well, sounds like it. Moving on. I don't know that one. That one, I don't know. That's one of those stories that it's like, yeah, everybody sees spirits, and it's just no big deal. I don't know. When people just do it so matter-of-factly, like, well, I took pictures, and there it was, but I see him anyway, so, well, then what'd you bother with? Why'd you bother with the camera? If you weren't going to publish the picture, then why talk about it? All right. Let's see. And next, we're going to Tennessee this time, ladies and gentlemen. Again, the phone number's 720-923-0500 if you want to call in and share something of your very own. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep reading, but I'll take a look every once in a while. If somebody's trying to call in, I will do my best to get to you. Tennessee. After the incident described, what? I hate it when they tie in one story from another story. I mean, it's not like they're written one after the other. They'll submit one story and then months later submit another one and try to explain it that, oh, this is tied to that one, but I don't see where the other story is. So I never experienced anything of that magnitude again. They're referring to another story they apparently written, a part one. I did, however, have a few more experiences that left me wondering. There were plenty of times that you could hear inexplicable noises. There were the classic crashes, and then nothing had fell. The sound that made me scratch my head the most was the sound of the front door being unlocked after closing. One evening about 2 years ago, when I got to work, I went straight to the boss's office to tell him that I had received a summons for jury duty. And after talking about the summons for a few minutes, I started to leave when the boss says, "Oh, by the way, did you leave the shopping basket rack sitting in the middle of the floor last night?" I insisted that I didn't move the rack at all, and he said that it wasn't a big deal. He figured I moved it to sweep under it and had forgotten to put it back. I told him that if I had moved it to sweep, that I would have moved it back when I had mopped. It was then we both realized it had to have been Susie. Susie was our pet name for whatever was in the store. Oh, okay. I'm going to quit reading this one because I remember the first part of the story now. It was the one that the person had contacted this site and said, no, I was the victim of a hoax. So I'm not even going to read any more of it because obviously it's not based in reality, ladies and gentlemen. So I can't perpetuate that kind of stuff. If it's an admitted hoax, it's got to go. So let's move to Michigan then, shall we? I grew up in the small town of Michigan, and as a little girl, me and my brothers played happily in our yard. Sometimes we would swing on the bouncy neighbor's fence. On the bouncy neighbor's fence? How do you swing on a bouncy neighbor's fence? That's interesting. Well, he would get angry and chase us away. And the fence was bending and getting grotesquely lower and lower to the ground. Most of the time we were good kids, and the older man and his wife next door were quiet and often kept to themselves. They were nice elderly people, and when I would see him coming and going, at times I would run up to him and say, "Hello, mister. How is your missus?" And he would nod and say she was fine, and he seemed strangely sad when he said it, though. I just sensed something was wrong. His missus would often sit on the front porch when the weather was fair, and sometimes I would run up to the porch and say hello to her. "Hello, missus," and wave. And she rarely spoke and would just nod her head in acknowledgement. She often wore a shawl and a long dress, and her hair was in a gray bun, and I guessed that she was pretty old. I guess she caught a chill easily, and that is why she seemed to have the shawl. She liked to sit in the rocking chair by the window sometimes and rock back and forth, and I would wave at her when I saw her. They say I looked like Punky Brewster. That's a dated reference. I had freckles on my nose and a short, choppy haircut. I guess I was somewhat of a tomboy because I had 6 brothers, and 3 of them were younger than I was. I guess I was around the age of 6 or 7 years old at the time. Everything amused me when I was young, and when I would walk outside, sometimes the wind would suddenly stir up and swoosh around me, and the leaves in the yard would dance around me in a perfect circle. I'd just laugh and turn in a counterclockwise circle as the leaves danced around me. The wind was my friend. The leaves were my friends, and the butterflies, ants, crickets were all my friends. I had real friends and a large family, but nature seemed to talk to me in a way that always caught my imagination. It had been a long time since I had seen Mr. and his missus, and I faintly remember people walking in and out of his house dressed in black, and I was collecting pretty rocks in the yard, and that kept my attention. One day I saw the missus again, sitting on the front porch rocking back and forth, wearing a dark shawl and a long, dark dress. Her hair was up in a gray bun, as usual, and Something seemed different this time. It seemed like she was far, far away, like in another dimension. I waved at her and she looked at me but did not speak or nod as she usually did. And I saw her several times that week, and sometimes rocking on the porch, sometimes sitting in the window rocking back and forth. I was preoccupied, so I would just wave at her and when I saw her in the window and go back to my playing. Later that day, I saw Mr. coming home and walking sadly up to his house. I ran up to him and said, "Hello, mister. I saw your missus sitting in the porch rocking in her rocking chair in the window, too." She was rocking back and forth. He looked at me strangely and he shook his head, his head no. I was insistent. "I know what I saw." Yes. Yes. It says, "Yes, I imposed myself. I did see her." He looked at me and spoke calmly and said, "My missus is dead. She's been dead for a couple of weeks now." I was struck dumb. I did see her, and I described to him what she was wearing, and he looked strangely at me and said, and sad, and just walked slowly to his house, shaking his head no. It wasn't the last time that I saw her. I would see her every now and then, and I always asked myself every time I saw her if she was dead. Why can't I see her? Shouldn't she be invisible? I wanted to speak to her, but I was afraid. If she really was dead, why did she keep appearing as though she was still living? I heard my mother talking to the neighbors on the phone, and she said she swears that she saw that woman sitting in the window rocking in her rocking chair, the one who had died. I never told Mom I saw her too. Mom would quiet down when she noticed us kids within hearing distance. My younger brothers said they didn't see her. As I grew up, I never forgot her, and I guess she and her husband had been together for so long that she couldn't leave him, not right away. She had to visit him every now and then before she took her long journey to the other side. I've often been visited by those who have died and passed over, and sometimes family members would make themselves known to me. My father and mother both visited me near the times of their deaths. I've noticed that when people die, they don't go to the other side right away. Sometimes they linger and say goodbye to those that they loved. Sometimes they get lost. Sometimes they live amongst us. I don't see them as often as I used to, but every once in a while, I will still see them. Sometimes they look just as real as you or me, and sometimes they hide in shadows, like when my father died. I sensed him standing in my closet in the dark. My father used to spy on me, trying to catch me doing something wrong, or sometimes they float up to the ceilings, like my mom did when she visited me. They often don't mean us harm. They often want to leave us with messages of encouragement. However, it can be pretty scary. One day I will die, and when I think about visiting my close family and loved ones, I would like my last message to be this: if God brings you to it, He will bring you through it. Happy moments, praise God. Difficult moments, seek God. Quiet moments, worship God. Painful moments, trust God. And every moment, thank God. That's a pretty message. And we got a caller. So let's get to our caller, and this is area code 406. You're on the air.
Howdy, everybody out there in Paranormal Portal Land. How you doing, Brett?
I'm good, but I really can't hear you. You sound like you're talking into a coffee cup and then into a phone.
Oh, no.
There you are.
You can't hear it? You no good reception?
No,
you can hear me now?
You're good now. All of a sudden, boom, you're there. Welcome to the show, sir.
Okay.
Welcome.
Yeah. Well, I got a story for you guys, and it's not a ghost story.
Okay.
And I'll try and maintain position here so that I can hopefully read it and you can hear me at the same time.
Okay, good.
But this is one of those weird things that I get. Can you hear me still?
Yep, we're hearing you good now.
Okay. Yeah, you have to go around and collect ghost stories every day, and I just sit back and people send me weird cryptid reports. And man, some of them I wish I didn't get them because they're really creepy. This one just came in from Alaska. Some years back, I decided to hunt geese. Early May 7, 2008. The weather was great, and the birds were flying. After work, I trekked overland on the tundra, passing Pitcher Mountain over into the lakes and marshes by snow machine. There was very little snow due to the warm weather. After packing snacks, I headed out alone. Upon arrival to my hunting area, I noticed a fellow hunter and decided to build a hunting blind not far from him. Hours passed, and the wind was picking up, which drove the waterfowl to fly higher. It was nearing 10 o'clock in the evening, and my hunting buddy decided to head home. On a hunch, I opted to stay and set up a hunting blind on the upper end of the marsh. Before that, I counted about 8 or more snow machines passing through. There was a lot of open water, and conditions were dangerous. After reaching my destination, I set up a hunting spot in the clearing. As the birds began to arrive, I was excited and looking forward to going home with a few fat geese. As I crouched down to aim at a descending flock, my peripheral vision of my left eye locked on a small dark object about 150 yards out. Upon glancing, I saw a small boy out in the marsh looking at me. Thinking I was seeing things, I looked away and looked back, but he was still there, motionless. Surprised because he had just appeared out of nowhere, I went out to greet the kid. I asked him a lot of questions. He did not answer. The boy appeared dazed, disoriented, and afraid. He had a hoodie, a thin jacket, and tennis shoes, but he was dry. Yet there was water all around him. Thinking his ride had fallen through at the other end of the portage, I used stern language to get his attention. All he'd say was, "I don't know." By then I was upset, thinking whoever brought him may have drowned, and he's not telling me anything. Then he stated he was alone. After having him swear the truth, he asked me to take him home. I offered him candy, a soft drink, or food. He refused. Now, I found that odd, a 7 or 8-year-old refusing goodies. Shortly, we headed homeward over the hill and down the valley towards Marshall. Nearing Marshall, he asked that I drop him off at his grandmother's rather than his parents', and I even escorted him to her home. When I told the grandmother where I found him, her jaw dropped. She mentioned seeing him several hours before and thanked me. It wasn't until the next day that I learned what had actually happened to him. The boy had been abducted by the little folk, lured away from the village and tricked into their custody. Inside the mountain, he saw thousands of little people speaking in English, Yupik, and a language he had never heard before. There were many tunnels and glowing rocks were lighting. According to the kid, he saw a little girl, a captive, who was closely guarded. After being questioned, they showed him 3 tunnels. He chose one and exited behind the mountain alone, back in the human realm.
Wow.
Excuse me.
Wow.
What seemed a few minutes to him was actually about 4 hours. He told his family when he saw me he wasn't sure if I was human, and he was terrified of me. That explains why he was so pale and his unwillingness to speak to me or answer any questions. I often wondered if the little people intentionally put him where I found him. One of those weird things that keeps coming up. Or if it was a mere coincidence. Of all the hunters passing by, no one else saw him. That fact alone had me baffled for a while. What had happened was a paranormal encounter, something out of the ordinary. The little people who our elders often told of had taken this child and released him. I believe he is lucky. Some taken are often kept forever. There are more details about this abduction only he knows. The boy is now a grown man, and I'm grateful I saw and returned him home to his family that evening. The area where I found him is often frequented by huge tundra grizzlies and brown bears. This story ran in the Anchorage Daily News, and I still can remember all the phone calls from the nosy reporters as far away as Germany seeking facts. And Nick P. Andrew Jr. And there you go.
Wow. That is intense. Oh.
Yeah, that's what I said, too, when I saw it. And the other thing that he sent with me is from a separate sighting, somebody found a traditional Eskimo-style fish rack, where they make the rack and they hang up the strips of the fish on it and they dry it.
Mm-hmm.
And this was really cool, except he found it like out in the middle of nowhere, and the entire rack was only about 18 inches tall.
Oh, jeez. Oh, no. That's intense.
Yeah, so he was kind of shaken up by that, too. He knew right away, it's like, there must be little people around here, and I'm leaving the area, and that was pretty much it. Snap a picture, go.
Oh, jeez. So was there any description of the little people at all? Were they like gnome-like little people, or were they? I don't imagine.
See, that's all we got from the story. We would have to actually contact the apparently still living victim of the abduction and get him to talk about it.
Right.
That's all we got from the story of the guy that saved him.
That's intense. Oh, man. And they was in the mountain.
So into the mountain, yeah. And this comes up a lot with the little people. They live underground. They usually have big enclaves with a bunch of them. They're not moving around much. They tend to stay in one place. I also have a person that's having problems with puckwudgies apparently down in Texas right now.
Oh,
and I've referred him to Robin Moonshadow to get more information from her before I have him and probably her back on the show to talk about it.
Yeah, the puckwudgies are kind of as far as the little people go, they are the worst to have problems with.
Yeah, they're like the nuclear bombs of little people. That's the ones you don't want to run into right there. Stay away from them.
That's really intense.
But anyway, that was the whole story I just wanted to share with you guys. So I'll let you go again, and everybody have a great evening.
All right, Duke, thank you so much, and I appreciate you sharing it here. That's awesome.
No problem, guys. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Right, good night. Wow, little people. I love stories about little people because I really do think there's something to that. That those legends have been around and persist because there's some truth to them. I don't understand it. I don't know how we can be living in our modern world and still have reports of these little diminutive people, even living around urban areas. How do they go undetected? How do they remain unseen? Do they have special other abilities that we just don't understand? Or are they perhaps able to step foot in through dimensions? I don't know. I don't understand a lot of it. Now, if we talk about things like time slips and things like that and Mandela effects, if you follow any of that stuff, ladies and gentlemen, then those are very possibly dimensional shifts as well. And so if we know we can have Mandela effects, we can have, and if you're not familiar with Mandela effects, do some research. It's an amazing phenomena. But what it suggests is that some people end up traversing dimensions. It suggests that maybe there was a dimensional shift where the things you remember, they are correct, but they're not correct for wherever you are now. And so if that is possible, then is it so hard to believe there could be beings that could do that at will because they choose to? So when you look at dimensional anomalies, time shift, time slips, they're all kind of hand in hand, and they seem to show a real flexibility of the reality that we consider rock solid. Our reality is fluid and dynamic, and if there are Mandela effects, and I believe there are, because I recognize many of them and have real problems with the different version that exists now than what I remember. And again, a lot of people chalk that up as anomalies in our psychology and faulty memories and stuff. If one person's having a faulty memory, that's very possible. But when entire segments of the population are having it, that's no longer a memory glitch. That is a phenomena. For one person to have it, sure, it could be a psychology thing, could be a physiology thing, but for whole segments of the population to have the same memory glitch, I don't buy that. There's something afoot. So if those things can happen, could other beings traverse these things at will? Could they have a knowledge of how to do that? Whereas we just kind of like, oh, hey, what do you mean? What do you mean the Berenstain Bears? We end up like, like a drunk stumbling through the hallway. Oh, how'd I get into my sister's room? I meant my room, or whatever. It's just like, but could there be beings that have an understanding of these dynamics and can traverse them at will because they understand how that works? And I think it's possible. So before you dismiss things because it just sounds like, oh, geez, little people, just understand that we really don't understand a whole hell of a lot about what's going on here yet. I think we're getting there, and I think it's encouraging with the sciences and what we're learning about the fundamentals of our reality, and things that we thought were real that aren't, or may not be concrete. They might be much more fluid. But anyway, that's a whole nother show. But thank you so much, Duke, for calling in and sharing that, and thank you all for being here. I guess that's going to wrap it up for tonight's show, but I love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other, help each other out, find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. And I'll see you next time Actually, I'll see you tomorrow night. Don will be joining me. We'll do the Wednesday show. And remember, this Friday, Mrs. Deborah Varner will be joining us for free psychic readings on the Friday show, 7 p.m. Pacific time. Call the number there, right there. Call that number on Friday night, 7 p.m. Pacific time, and you too can have a free psychic reading from Mrs. Deborah Varner. So I hope you guys will be here and take advantage of that opportunity. But again, I love you guys. Take care. Thank you, Gemini. I appreciate that. That's very sweet. Gemini says, thank you, Paranormal Portal. It's what I do, ma'am. It's what I do. So we'll see you guys tomorrow night, and we will talk to you soon. Sweet dreams, and I'll see you soon. I don't know what else to say. It's just hard to say goodbye. But good night, everybody.